I will give everyone 3 more minutes. Okay, we're going to mute. All right.
So Paula, this is helpful because I did have some people, as I shared, that were interested in starting the next Business Ready.
Yes.
It looks like on March the 18th.
That is correct.
Is this particular slide right here on the website too?
It will
Okay.
be posted.
Okay.
We'll have orientation sessions beginning February the 23rd up until the week of the start date on March 18th. And as stated, it's broken into 3 modules, and I'm going to cover this at the end of the webinar in case anyone wants to refer a friend, as well as talk about the direct services, which allows individuals to go through the program, through the group training program at no additional cost, but they are allowed to obtain 18 additional one-on-one services.
That's great.
Yeah, it's a good deal. And I'm excited about where we're going. And I can see they're all coming on. Everyone give a shout out. I'm going to go ahead and cut the cameras on because, Don, they really don't get to see me that much outside of the computer. So they get a pleasure. They get to see me. Hi, everyone. How y'all doing?
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning. We have Elena, Tommy. Hi, Tommy. Haven't seen you in a while. How you doing? Fred, welcome back. Hi, LaShawn. We can't hear you. But we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to stop your video. Don, if you could cut on your video so that they can see who you are. I'll ask for your video, ask to start your video.
Okay.
All right, welcome everyone. Happy Friday. And
Happy Friday.
Thank you all for joining us for our weekly new Lunch and Learn webinars. I am so happy that Ms. Tucker has agreed to participate and become a part of my team. As you all know, I'm always emphasizing collaboration and making sure that we begin to work together and pull our resources together. I am going to mute someone I'm getting feedback from. The housekeeping, how we'll start is 20 minutes of discussion, and then we'll conclude with any question and answers. I'm so impressed with Miss Tucker. She and I go back a long ways. I'm not going to steal her thunder. I'll let her go ahead and share her background and how we actually have reunited after 20 years. We're not going to date ourselves though, but it's all good. So let's go ahead and begin our Lunch and Learn series. Ms. Tucker, introduce yourself, please.
Thank you, Miss Paula Caldwell Watts. Hello, everyone. My name is Dawn Tucker, and I am president of Lord & Tucker Management Consultants, and we are based in Maryland. And the beauty of webinars, as Paula has said, you can be anywhere in the United States or all over the world and participate. So I too am excited. I met Paula, probably like she said, back in the early 1990s when I was a contract specialist for the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. And Paula was one of my contractors. Her business was JW and Associates, and they provided primarily conference support and other services. She was an 8A firm, a star and a standout organization with a standout team of people with her in her company. So that's where we met. And over the years, we both have done different things in our careers. And I eventually have started my own firm. It's an 8A firm. We are in our 3rd year. And I'm extremely excited. And based on what Paula has shared with me, the knowledge that I've gained by being a contract specialist in the federal government, and then going out and being a 1099 contractor with my company, but now moving it to the level where it's an 8A firm and we are winning prime and subcontracts and hiring staff and continuing to grow. And that is the beauty of this process, is that is what you can do, especially for those who are in the federal space. The contracts that I have primarily started to win are, they were at places where I had built relationships, where I was doing work. And the first prime contract that I did receive was at the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, where I was a contract specialist. And it was by the person who was my contracting officer who taught me contracts, who gave me the first opportunity. And then a colleague that had moved up in the federal government at CMS, she and the contracting officer had moved into these policy-led positions, and they needed some procurement support, focusing on acquisition policy. And that's my bread and butter. I love that. But, providing people to do staff augmentation in the federal government across many disciplines, as we well know, is a viable option that I know a lot of you guys have for your sweet spots in your businesses.
Oh, that is absolutely wonderful. And I must give Dawn her kudos. She actually was the one who awarded me my very first contract in the program.
Well, I didn't know that, Paula.
Yes, you were. We didn't have a clue what we were doing, but you didn't know that.
No, you sure didn't. You did. You were a star.
And so that was what led us to get the other contracts and to grow the business so quickly. So why I'm pulling Dawn in on the team, because again, she's sort of bringing a different twist than I do. And I want everyone to be able to understand. I don't want you to hear it from one voice. Dawn's expertise in just being on the inside in the front line as a contract specialist brings a whole different level that I wasn't exposed to. And now herself going through the process of being an 8A firm, I'm loving the collaboration. So Dawn, can you please explain for those who may not understand the role of a contract specialist? Because we see your name on the FBO and we really don't know what happens once we respond to those RFQs or once we respond to those RFPs. What is your job? What was your job as a contract specialist?
Okay, a contract specialist in the federal government is the first pretty much line of communication with a government contractor. The contract specialist works very closely with two primary individuals along with other areas within the federal government. But the primary people are the contracting officer and the contracting officer representative. And last week there was an overview by Linda who explained the role of the contracting officer representative. Now the contract specialist brings the expertise of the business manager to the team, if you will. We ensure that the CS, as we call them, ensure that there's what's called an acquisition plan and strategy that is formulated and is done in a timely manner in order to award whatever the eventual solicitation document. It might be a contract, it could be a purchase order, it could be a GSA schedule. So with that said, the contract specialist is the person who helps to define that with the contracting officer rep. What is going to actually go out to the public and to be awarded as a vehicle? Is it going to be a full contract that someone can bid on, anyone can bid on? And the first level that they allow that the bids can come from are supposed to come from small business. Or is it going to go through the GSA schedule? And if you don't have a GSA schedule, it's a schedule is a document or a pre-made vehicle that if a contractor does not have it, they will not be able to bid on the contract. So they won't see it. And it won't necessarily go through FedBiz Ops, FBO, as Paula mentioned. And then the contract specialist helps the core or the contracting officer representative to do what they call market research. So they put out what they call requests for information. And if it goes through GSA, they can send that request. It's a different name for it, but it goes just people who are in that GSA pool. So the overall body of contractors will not see it, only the people who have GSA schedules. But if they do it as an option where they want to go out and really see what's available in the market, the contract specialist will help the contracting officer rep, and the contracting officer will approve the documentation and ensure that it is in compliance, because the CEO is the person who is going to sign on the behalf of the government. But the contract specialist is the person that you're going to work with hand in hand, as Paula and I did. And if you work with a contractor and you see that they have the capability, you want to find the contractors that you know who can do the job and you can depend on, because you're probably going to be that contract specialist who's going to administer the contract after it's awarded.
And was there any specific industries that you worked with? Are you all assigned to industries? How do they assign the specialists to what contracts? Or you're working with all gamuts or all different types of industry based on that agency's mission?
Yes, it's based on the agency's mission. You can work on a gamut. When I started in federal contracting at the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid, I worked in a group called the Peer Review Organizations. It was based on statute, and they changed it to a word called QIOs, or Quality Improvement Organizations. So the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid had 53 of these organizations throughout the country, one per state. Now it's changed now, and it was by statute. So the contracts that I awarded primarily focused on that. However, I did have contracts like a conference support contract that Paula's company, for example, had as an 8A firm. And then I also had contracts with large CPA firms. So I worked directly with the partners on awarding contracts where we would maybe have them on a task order, IDI, indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity vehicle. And they were able to do the work because small businesses, we determined that small businesses weren't able to do the work. We would go out to sometimes these large CPA firms and work directly with that industry, with the partner, people who were high up in the organization to award their particular contract.
Did you
excuse me?
One quick question. Did you find that the competition on the federal level, how many responses were you getting from source of sought notices and RFQs and RFPs for small businesses? Was the competition very competitive on that level?
Yes, very. It was very competitive. When a person puts out an RFI or they're looking for that small business. And for example, if it's a women-owned in this world that we're living in now, the competition is stiff, very stiff. So it still behooves someone to respond, because if they have the actual capabilities versus someone who just responded who don't have the capabilities, that company has a leg up.
Okay. So people are submitting, but they may not have the competition. So out of the number of people that are responding, you would say maybe half have the real capabilities, or you're saying
probably just right, because sometimes some of the requirements that the government puts out are extremely specific. But on the other hand, if it's something that is project management, and the project is not a very technical or project or scientific, if you will, project management skills are, and the company has those good skills that they can win that contract as a small business. However, with that said, it can start to get very, very specific, and then that weeds out different people. So if a person worked in that particular agency, like myself, at the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, then I had the inside knowledge of certain programs that other people just wouldn't have. They just wouldn't have it. And
Correct.
even if I had some of the knowledge, I still didn't have some of the specific knowledge that was really technical.
Correct. And so what would, going on to the next, this is good, Don, thank you. Going on to the next question. For someone that's starting in this game, what would you recommend the best approach to winning contracts?
The best approach to winning contracts, and you had in the question, is outside of taking your training, but the training is well structured to help someone who wants to become a federal government contractor. It's true. The GPI training is structured, and the way you're expanding it to specific topics like the core training and or the next level of federal government contract and even more in depth, that is critical, and the pricing and the cost. For someone who wants to get started, they should do as much of their homework and take as much good training like this as they possibly can. However, with that said, there is a wealth of training from the Small Business Administration, even just webinars where on your downtime you can review, and the Small Business Development Centers as well as the PTAPs. Now, with that said, the PTAPs are organizations that are funded by the Department of Defense to focus on procurement to help people become procurement ready. However, they are overworked and understaffed. The knowledge is there. However, if you can find a program like this with what Paula has put together, it will help you to move up a whole level above. Now, if you have the skill sets and you worked in the government, you don't necessarily have to have worked in the government. If you do have a technical skill and you want to learn how to establish your business and then be able to talk the language of federal procurement, then you come to training such as this, because it is a language. It's like a foreign language. And the things that you learn internally, like I've learned over the years, or Linda has learned, it's because we've been immersed in it, and it does become a part of you, and you do understand it.
Yeah, it is.
But it's not like someone else can't learn
it. Yes, but what I found, having played on both sides, and I think you may be able to attest to that, working for the government and running a business is entirely two different things. And I can use that an example of going to an event I went to yesterday. They were encouraging businesses to respond to source of SALT notices, but no one's teaching them how to respond to it. So the government is more regulated and concerned whether or not you're meeting disqualifications or checking off this box. They may not be able to show you how to get to that point. And that's what I found even with the resource partners. Because I was a SCORE counselor. I've worked with SBTCs and PTACs, and it's all information based. And it's good information, but someone needs to connect the dots. So that's why I'm glad that you all are coming on, so that you can take it to another level, because you're going to be able to see from the government's perspective something I don't have. What exactly what pushes me ahead of the next person? What pushes you, and what do you look at as that contract specialist when you're looking at the responses to the source of SALT notice or the RFQs? What makes you pull that one aside?
What I'm looking for is someone who answers the questions, who organizes the documents the way that we ask them to organize the documents. A lot of times there is a format and a structure that is asked in the RF, request for information, or the solicitation, that is very specific. And they're saying do not respond to with a capability statement. Just don't say my capabilities are X, Y, and Z. If there are listings of technical requirements that are listed or technical requests, those things need to be addressed. Those evaluation factors, they're going to evaluate those technical areas with what we call evaluation factors. And It's similar to a test. If you're taking the SAT, or if you're going for a position or a job and they're looking for buzzwords in your resume, and the way it's fleshed out, that is the way that a solicitation or a request for information is being reviewed. And a lot of times the government is really looking for solutions, and they will put specific questions in something like a request for information. But a lot of times contractors don't want to respond because they feel like their information will be used and they won't get credit for it. But with that said, if they are specifically really needing a solution, and they may even award, even in the 8A solicitation, if it is set aside for 8A under $4 million, they will sometimes award a contract based on the request for information submission, because they're under the gun to award a contract, and it has been proven by your response that you are capable to do the work. They will award a contract to an 8A firm. I've seen it done over and over again.
And how do you view contingency? Say I'm brand new, and I'm bringing on a whole host of contingency hires that I am looking to bring onto the team that have the technical expertise to perform on those contracts. How are you evaluating me as a company and my response based on my contingency hires?
Well, that's a good question. Contingent hires, we will ask at times, and when I say we, a contract specialist, when I was in that role, they would ask for signatures that this particular person was going to come on board once the contract was awarded. And we will evaluate the people who have been submitted based on that submission. The contract will be awarded based on those people, if that is one of the higher levels or part of the evaluation process. Now, there are times that we understand that people may have to move on. However, there must be a substitute, and a good statement of work will provide the criteria, the amount of experience, and the level of maybe education. And a lot of times what's good about the GSA schedule is because that information is already highlighted in the GSA schedule. It's already been negotiated. So you can pull it into your contract at an agency such as CMS. I can use the GSA schedule and award quicker because of that fact. And I will evaluate. And if it's something what's called a key personnel, and they say that this person is key, that particular person is key. And the government will say, you have to tell me with so much time in advance, or if this person leaves, we need someone who comes in with that same level of capability to fulfill this key position.
Yeah. So that's why I was saying that could potentially be a way for a small business to get into the door by being able to create teams that have the technical expertise. Although the company may not have the past performance, but they created a team that now the government can see that small business have the team of experts that are able to perform on that contract. That's
right. Right. That sometimes that's what it comes down to. If the government knows they're looking for certain type of skill sets, that may be what will be how it's awarded.
Okay. Very good. Very good. I said we would close with 10 minutes of a Q&A. I have a question from, I believe it's Deshawn or LaShawn. Her question is, in a RFQ, if we are given information that is our intellectual property, how do we protect it?
When you come to the government with intellectual property, it has to be negotiated. In the terms and conditions of that contract, you will come to the contracting officer and the specialist, and you will come in with your negotiation strategy and plan. And what the government will come back and say is that there are things like they have called data rights or rights in data. And these things are spelled out in the Federal Acquisition Regulations. So when you come to the table, you should have expert or legal support with you to ensure that you are protected the way that you feel you need to be protected without the government taking your intellectual property, and you don't even know you signed up to something in the contract because it's in these things called the Federal Acquisition Regulations. So you must read the document, the contractual document closely, and have legal support to ensure your intellectual property is protected.
Oh, very good. Thank you, Don. No one even thinks about that, but that's a good point. Mr. Anderson asked, if a company is MBE certified, but no government experience and is registered in SAM system, how do we get into a prime and subcontracting relationship? This would be beneficial for a small business that has the experience, but not the experience in government. I can answer that for you, Mr. Anderson. You go through GPI training, we teach you these skills on how to leverage those relationships. Having had the experience at SBA and understanding that no one is really connecting the dots for these businesses and creating this strategy. What we're creating in our program is a strategy. So you're not just out there hunting and not have a game plan.
Can I add real quick?
Yes.
Developing your past performance and starting the summer is like a resume. So when you do work with somebody, a program such as Paula's, or if you're looking to start developing what they call your capability statement, that information that you're gaining is part of your resume, and it will go into that capability statement.
Very good. I have Yvonne. Yvonne asks, what are some of the common pitfalls would you suggest new small businesses avoid?
Going into federal government contracting it is definitely a contract, and you must perform. No ifs, ands, ups, ors, or buts. If a company comes in and they do not perform, they have a black taint on their company. And there's something that their evaluations, and it goes into a system, a government-wide system called CPARs and PEEPers. And I apologize that I don't have what they stand for, but anyone can see that information. And to understand what your contract says and what your statement of work and your deliverables are and when they are due. A deliverable may be a monthly status report. And if that person does not submit that, now all they have to do is submit the monthly status report at the time that they tell you to submit it. If it's not submitted, it's not comprehensive, or if you don't understand because it's not clear, then it is up to the contractor to ask. And the government should come back with a format with what they want to see.
Yes.
Simple things like that. Just doing it, providing what's being asked in that contract.
Again, a lot of what has been one of your most successful small business success stories?
Successful small business success stories. Well, Paul, if you say for yourself, I didn't know JW Associates was the first contract that we awarded for you. So you were a success story because you delivered. We were there. I mean, I don't know how long. What was it? 3-4 years?
4 years.
You delivered on your deliverables for conference planning, and you were a success. And your staff were responsive. They were engaging. The customer in the program offices, because you went across the Centers for Medicare, several different areas, maybe even to the region. So I can't remember. And you did what you were supposed to do, and people asked for you. So that was a success story. And I have looked at several different companies over the years, and the ones who were more successful where the leadership, or even if they had access, they were people who had access to the building because they were working on site. And they would be engaged with us and come and talk and really deliver and provide solutions. There's nothing wrong with building relationships, and you don't want to be overbearing and bothersome and take advantage, because there were some who did that too, who took advantage of that relationship. But with that said, if they were delivering what they were called to deliver, and you know you could depend on them, that was critical.
It's word of mouth. It's like
Yes.
anything else. It's word of mouth because the government don't want to be in the position where they have a bad mark on them as well. You're in
Right.
essence a reflection of the government. So
And they need help. The government needs quality help. Paul and I have discussed this. There are things internal that we think people take for granted that should be known or done, but it's not happening. And that's why contractors have opportunities to come in and support and fill the gaps.
absolutely. From Dawn, her question states, it's coming up to 5 years since I retired from the government. My past performance is technical is with the government. How should I respond if my past performance time exceeds the number of years that is asked?
Oh, that's a good question. A lot of times they are looking for what they call recent, but sometimes it'll say similar experience. And if you say and state and document, this is what you were asking me for, if it is saying 5 years of past performance within the last 5 years, then you would say, I have X experience related to your question, but it may be similar experience or it's past the 5 years. You just respond with what you have. Now, if you are able to have a team, a partner, or someone, when I say a partner, if you have a staff person or a subcontractor who's working with you that could help fill that gap, then that would be acceptable as part of the past performance. But again, it's all about what they say and ask for in that solicitation. And you can ask the question.
Correct. And I encourage them to. I encourage them to. We have one more question from Dawn. Dawn says, I have the capability statements and have been to the PTAC training. Is it possible for my background to be evaluated first and look into the TPI training? Yes, Dawn, that will lead me right into just letting you know when the next webinar that's coming up on the orientation. But what I was discussing with Don, again, when you're looking at even SBA's specialists, people work with government, they're trained for one area. Unless you run a small business, you're not going to necessarily understand the nuts of it. And I always tell businesses, my test point is, have you had to meet a payroll? If you've had to meet a payroll, then you can understand my pain, because you will understand what processes that needs to occur from you from a small business to go after these contracts. So it's a different language, and the SBA is definitely a key factor in this program. So we will be having a free orientation session beginning Saturday, February 23rd. And the classes will start March 18th from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. The program is broken into 3 modules with the goal that you'll have tangible items at the end of each module, that you'll have a strategic marketing plan. We also offer direct services where you're able to participate in the 24 group training with no additional cost. And you get 18-hour sessions based on your time. With that being said, Don, thank you so much. Can everyone give Miss Don a hand? She's done a wonderful job in breaking this process down.
Awesome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I enjoyed it. Thank you. I've been looking forward to moving forward.
And Don will be joining the team. What we're planning on doing is for the next month, Miss Linda will come back and she'll do another webinar. Don will do another webinar. And then the next week, we're dealing with the accounting system. I'll close with that. Do you find that being the most challenge with small businesses when they're submitting their invoices? Is that seems to be a little sore spot in making sure they're accounting system is in compliance with what they are submitting to you and trying to get paid?
Well, most people know how to submit an invoice and get paid, okay? They may not understand all the ins and outs behind it, but they know how to submit that invoice and get paid. But with that said, seriously, the different types of contracts, the government awards, fixed price versus cost versus time and material and labor hour, the invoice has to be structured in a certain way, a certain backup information. And if it's not there, it's rejected. It is rejected. And you don't want your invoices to be rejected because you don't understand. And that's not an excuse.
Mm, mm. And have you had the experience of, have you had to audit any of these small businesses when you were working in the government? Do you all go into that level in your role?
Well, we look at the documentation to ensure that the costs are allowable on that invoice. When I worked in the private sector before I went into the government, and it was with a defense contractor. It was Westinghouse that was bought out by Northrop Grumman. And we did audit on the floor. We did floor checks to audit to ensure that the people were, and we were internal. So we would go out on the floor and make sure that the charges were being properly charged on the time cards on the shop floor, because they had so many different orders coming through and they had to make sure they were charging it to the proper contract. So we did that internally as the finance team when I worked for Northrop Grumman and Westinghouse.
And have you ever had the experience of anybody submitting any fraudulent invoices, and how did they handle it?
I don't know if some people, I don't think people overall meant to submit things that were fraudulent. They may have not understood that it was unallowable. And again, ignorance is not bliss, but it's understandable because it's confusing.
Yes, it is.
You have to have an accountant, such as the person that is coming next week to explain, or the next 2 weeks. You need someone who can provide a good government system for you.
That understands what they're looking for, because
Yes.
again, all right. With that being said, thank you again, Don, and we look
Thank
forward
you.
to seeing you next month. Okay.
All right. Y'all have a good one. Take care.
All right. Have a great weekend.
All right. Bye-bye.